Sorry, what's the context? I don't know the context here. So you're a journalist.
Yeah, I'm a technology.
This is a role play.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he is a real journalist.
Right.
He would keen to learn about Nokia Siemens. He has his agenda. Today we invite him for interviewing our executive.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically the thing, the way that I usually interview someone for, for my news package is that, I try to have a conversation rather than just, shoot the questions and interview and just have a normal conversation, like, like me and you sitting in a bar in the living room, and but when there's something like in my head, then I'll come up with the follow-up questions.
Okay.
This kind of thing.
Sure.
So, what do you do for NSN?
I'm in the CTO group for Asia, Middle East, and Africa, but a little more focused on Korea, Japan, China at the moment.
So, what's that mean? What if the viewers want to know about you? What's your role as a things that that be more practical, that people would know that what you do for NSN?
Sure. So there's two parts. One part is interacting with all the CXOs, the customers. So, for example, presenting Vision 2020 or analysts as well. And then the second part is internally going back to our product groups to give them feedback on things we need to change or new products we need to satisfy the customers. So there's kind of two sides to it.
So basically, your visions of going in 2020 is that your company wants to be a part to improve the broadband and mobile networks around the world, including this part of the world, Southeast Asia and ASEAN as well.
Yes.
And one of it has to be the LTE. So what NSN does for the LTE technology in Southeast Asia?
Well, the whole company is focused on mobile broadband, of which LTE is one of the technologies. And there's a belief that everything sort of comes together towards LTE over time. So it's, of course, a critical focus.
So in terms of investments in technology, investments and infrastructures in the region, for example in Thailand, do you think infrastructure that we have right now, is it ready for LTE?
Well, I think, as you probably know very well, due to license awards, spectrum allocation, Thailand is a little bit lagging, but that doesn't mean that the demand is lagging. So I think there's perhaps a pent-up demand, and it's ready to adopt new technologies like 3G and LTE, and even after LTE. So I think it's not there yet, but the demand is there, and so now it's just a matter of time until the government makes the license awards and allows the operators to actually develop the infrastructure.
In some countries, I think even in countries like Singapore, Malaysia, and even some countries, they still think that 3G network doesn't reach the full potential of the 3G yet, and now 4G is coming, and many people are very excited about this technology. Do you think that compared to the 3Gs that not reached the full potential yet and the beginning of 4G, some people might say that why don't I just invest in 3G technology to reach its full potential before going to 4G? Do you agree with that?
This is a question I get asked almost every time I talk to customers and analysts. And so the first thing I can say, you can't give a general answer that applies to everybody, because every country and every operator is in a different situation. But in general, LTE is moving a bit faster than we expected in terms of the deployment globally. For example, the mobiles in 3G when they first came out weren't actually very good. They were very expensive, they didn't perform very well. The opposite is true in LTE. So in general it's moving a bit faster, so we think perhaps that, whereas some operators thought 3G would go on for a long time, they're now seeing that maybe it's not so bad an idea to make the jump to LTE a little bit faster than planned.
So there's two, if I would categorize, the type of LTE, there would be the LTE and the LTE advanced. And many in some countries like South Korea and in Scandinavian countries, they start using LTE advanced. What is the difference between these two?
In general, in all cases, the difference between each technology in mobile broadband is faster. And in many cases cheaper as well. So LTE Advanced gives new capabilities to have faster bandwidth, more than just LTE. And in doing so, perhaps, you could say also perhaps slightly cheaper in doing that. So that's kind of the typical trend of these advancements.
So there's the one provider in Thailand that actually, they use 4G in trial is 2Move Edge, which is, is in, testing 4G cellular network within Bangkok metropolitan area. What's your thoughts on how they operate the 4G network in Bangkok? And there's customers, including myself, who tried the LTE network from 2Move, and they thought that, the 3G, the 3G speed and the 4G speed is kind of the same. But it's kind of the same, or even it's just a little bit faster. And so people don't spend money to upgrade their cellular network to 4G. What's your thought on that?
I think when it's fully deployed, it's actually quite dramatically better. True has only done a relatively small scale deployment, and in that situation, your location will have a big impact on what your experience is. So for example, one of my colleagues measured outside this building 45, 50 megabit per second on his mobile phone as LTE. That's dramatically better than 3G. So it must be that the coverage outside this building is quite good. And then perhaps your own experience or somebody else's, they go to a different geographical location, they might not see such a big difference. So, but I think once True does a wider scale deployment, the view will be that it is significantly better.
Do you think is it worth it for other carriers to switch to 4G like in the next couple of years from now?
Certainly, but these questions never have a simple answer. So for example, 4G mobiles are generally more expensive than 3G mobiles. So is there the ability to afford the mobiles is often a question that is very country specific and operator specific sometimes. So it's not so easy to give a simple answer to that question.
In your perspective, as someone who is working in developing the technology like 4G LTE, do you think is TrueMove coming in the right direction? Because it looks like they make it a try, but in the regulations doesn't really clearly say that they're allowed to provide the 4G technology. So they kind of like tweak the laws a little bit just to make it happen. In terms of ethical issues and also in terms of the way they do the business. What's your thought on that?
Well, I can't really speak for True's assessment of whether they're within the guidelines of the laws or not. That's for them. They make their own decisions. But for the idea of advancing the technology, I think it is a good move. And maybe it will spur some of the other operators to think how they can be a little more aggressive.
even it's against the law.
But it's not, I'm not a lawyer. I don't, study government policy and regulations, how it fits with their licenses. That's something for them to understand.
In your opinion, and when it comes to, this is my last question, when it comes to the infrastructure and the readiness of the service providers here in Thailand, do you think when they will be ready to imply the LTE advance for, make it happen in this country?
Well, it's kind of a progression. So LTE advance requires a certain amount of spectrum or frequency available to be able to use. So that's kind of a prerequisite. But once you have that, from a technology perspective, it's actually quite simple on the infrastructure and for the mobiles actually. So I think assuming they have the right, we call it assets, then they can move very quickly towards LTE advance.
But the LTE advance would be something that would change the lifestyle of people who use the mobile devices. Like if it's faster, then what?
Great question. So what we see in other countries, when you get more speed, a couple of different things happen. One is maybe you drop your fixed line broadband at your home. That's a very typical scenario. Another thing is that when the speed is so good, there tends to be a lot more use of video. Basically because the experience is more pleasing. So, for example, Korea say that 70% of all traffic is video now. And it wasn't before, but that's because you have a higher speed. So those are the kinds of things that start happening when you get these advanced technologies.
But then also the data plan has to change too, because these days it looks like most of them they're having the limited data plan. Like okay, you can use the high speed network for just 2 gigabytes, 3 gigabytes, whatsoever. So then that has to change too.
That's right. Yeah. So you could all technologies. If you don't get the pricing right, it doesn't progress very well, or it doesn't sell very well. So you have to match your pricing with what people can afford and also with what they're getting. So again, a Korea example, but I think it's global. They start out with low packages and then they realize that they get consumed very quickly, and so they have to go to bigger packages. So that's quite typical.
Well, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot.